Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, it is time for us to finally revisit the Prydwen tier list. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is something that you might have thought that we covered before, but that was just the overall tier list that just rates characters based off of performance. What we're looking at today is the value tier list, and that's supposed to take a look at, well, who are the most valuable pulls in the game? What is a unit or maybe a set of units that every player should have on their account? And I think that this is a much different and a much more varied discussion than just looking at the overall performance tier list, because there are some units on the roster, right, that to make them feel good, you really need to have specific teammates, while there are other units on the roster that are ingredients to making other units feel good, but then they can be used in a bunch of different other places. And that's really what defines value compared to overall performance. It's a combination of factors. And so I think the best way for us to go ahead and take a look at this is to first see what the goal of this tier list is, because I think that this is a great ad, one of the greatest ads in the history of the game, then give our takes on where various units have landed. So without further ado, let's go ahead, let's get right on into it and see what value is going to be all about. For more general descriptions of how characters are evaluated in endgame contents at a baseline, please check the individual tier list section. The content below is going to be entirely factored around the value tier list. One, which is performance-based, individual one, then the value one is value-based, right? I think that's something we've already established before. We base this value tier list on a metric that seems hard to define at first. What is value? Well, we consider our definition of value to be as such, varying between DPS and hybrids, but boiling down to the same core. Value equals the performance of the unit divided by the cost. That sounds a little bit confusing at first. The goal of this definition and this tier list as a whole is to qualify what is the best bang for your buck when choosing to acquire a certain character, either by what's best in one specific game mode by looking at one of the two tier lists, or combining both of the rankings in order to determine what's most worth on somebody's account. Don't worry, they got a lot of disclaimers over here, because the last time the value tier list was made, some people were schizoing out like crazy. The idea is to maximize performance at the minimal cost required to clear endgame content smoothly and comfortably. Remember, that's the baseline. How easily does pulling this character make, or how does it improve your performance in the endgame modes? It's aimed both at new players looking to clear endgame content as quickly as possible, and experienced players looking to get characters that can work quickly out of the box and efficiently. So hopefully, if you combine this tier list with the regular one that they have, you'll be able to make the sort of like best determination on who's worth pulling on your account when their banner pops up. I haven't actually had any real role at all in curating this list, despite what some people might think. I'm here to just take a look at it. So without further ado, let's go ahead. I guess we can review like the first changelog over here, April 30th. Today, we finally re-released the value tier list we initially scrapped. This time, we came back with more work put into it, and it's separate from our performance-based tier list. We spent an excessive amount of time detailing our grading process. We just took a look at that. So, yeah, we got the full picture over here. You can go check it out and see if you agree with this process or not. If you think our grading process is flawed because value is a subjective term, then that's okay. Strictly refer to your own personal testing then and just fuck right off out of here. So for TOA, they're focusing on Hiyuki here. Watch listed to go potentially up on the value tier list, assuming the Glacio Chafe character that's coming out in the future gets released. And Chisa, watch listed to potentially go up with Denya's release. As we all know, Chisa's getting a third team with Fusion Burst, and Denya's going to be sort of like the core component of it. I think those are kind of like the only things that they're talking about over here, though. So we'll be ready to move on pretty soon. And remember, guys, the value tier list is based off of performance divided by the cost. Are you guys ready? Tier 0. They got Imeth and Luke Herson for the Tower of Adversity. And the reasoning over here, ladies and gentlemen, should be pretty goddamn simple. Imeth leads the best overall TOA teams in the game, and she gets amazing performance even without her signature. However, you do kind of need her to have some good teammates. But this is the thing. Her high performance is what is allowing her to be up here, despite the fact that she has some somewhat expensive teams. The best team that Imeth can run, for example, right, features Lene and Mornier. But guess what? Linné and Mornier can also be used in some other lineups. So it's not like she's up here being giga expensive, requiring a bunch of teammates that don't work anywhere else. And that's why you might not actually see units like Frolova up here, even though you think they might actually belong there. Luke Herson, on the other hand, well, he's got a comfortable spot over here for one specific reason. Homeless Luke is essentially a team composition that you run where Luke Herson doesn't even have his signature weapon. He instead uses something like Pulsation Bracer over here, right? The standard one that you can just get. Then you pair him up with units like Sanhua, Verina, all of that, and he's still able to clear pretty much everything except floors 3 and 4 in the TOA. You get more of his premium stuff, you're able to get more work done, but he's easily the most free-to-play friendly unit in the game because you don't actually need a lot of investment in him to get some very, very, very strong results. And that's why he's at the top over here as like pretty much the best overall free-to-play unit, because he's got such affordable, ridiculously affordable teams. Next up, though, we got to take a look at the sub-DPS category, the hybrid category over here. And Linné pretty much has a comfortable spot for one main reason. She works on almost every team in the game, and then she also works on the standard static mist. And in a lot of situations, Linné is actually much easier to work around when she's on static mist instead of her signature. And the main reason for that is because static mist gives a shit ton of ER. That makes her a lot easier to build because Linné kind of feels like she needs around 127 to 130% ER for her rotations to work. Then you combine that with the fact that she's got some of the most general buffs in the game, 50% to everything, 25% to limp over here, then a 24% damage boost as well to pretty much every single type in the game. And then she gives Tomb Break boost too, somewhere in here. Yeah, it's somewhere in here. Yeah, here we go. 40-point Tomb Break boost over here on visual impact, so that improves her ability to buff. Then she got Neon Light Leap, which gives attack based off a Tomb Break boost that she buffs. You can kind of see what's going on over here. This unit ends up giving a fuck ton of attack, a fuck ton of general damage boost, and of course, has some general amp on her outro skill, but then does mostly liberation. She ends up working on an insane number of teams. And she even got a new team added in version 3.3 that features Hiyuki over here. And that's insane when you see how much of the roster she's actually supporting or has the capability to support. That's why she's considered the most valuable sub DPS in the game. And I don't think anyone can really go against that idea, knowing that she gets it all done on just a standard weapon. She has room for improvement from there, but not a lot of people see the need to pull her signature at all. Now, we got the next category, the supports, and this is where I'm going to have some disagreements over here. Mornier is in tier 0 alongside Shorekeeper and Verina. Verina and Shorekeeper, at least in my opinion, definitely do belong on here, simply due to the fact that they have some of the most generalized buffs in the game, with Verina buffing attack and also being completely fucking free, and then Shorekeeper over here with that amazing 12.5% crit and 25% crit damage. My personal take is that Mornier doesn't really have any buff beyond her buff from her set, right? Her Sonata set over here, which gives a fair amount of attack, to be fair, right? Halo of Starry Radiance, that gives an attack buff. But then aside from her outro skill of 25% all damage amp, she provides no other buffs unless your team has Tune Break of some kind, Rupture or Strain. And to me, having that restriction does kind of mean that she should be in tier 0.5. That's my personal opinion, because her value as a generalist healer kind of relies on you having Linné. Linné, on the other hand, does not need Mornier to be a great generalist sub DPS. And so to me personally, right, if we're seeing characters like Lupa and Qiuyuan bump down because they lack as much general use cases, I think you kind of got to do the same thing with Mornier, because her general use cases rely on her having other teammates. The other use case that she has is, of course, in Mono Fusion, but that requires her to have Lupa. So for her to feel like her team comps have really opened up, she needs Linné or Lupa, which to me is like a little bit too specialized to at least be in tier 0, especially knowing, right, that there's not really like a giga insane generalist support out just yet for her. Remember, Linné still has that kind of like liberation damage focus. So to me, I think Mornier should actually be bumped down a fair amount to tier 0.5, but that's just my personal opinion based off of, you know, all the testing that we've done so far. Now we got tier 0.5, and you can think about it this way. These are going to be some of the still strongest units in the game, and still some very, very, very highly recommended picks for most players. And so the runner-up that we're going to have over here, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be Augusta. And I think it's very simple why you want Augusta. Augusta clears virtually all the content in the game that isn't like electro-resistant just by having a 4-star sub-DPS on her team, good old Mortefi. And if you do decide to take your Augusta, give her some additional funding, and of course, pair her with Yuno, then, well, your Augusta's still going to have no trouble clearing everything else in the game. It's just going to be better than it was before. But it also still remains, she's very similar to Luke in how she functions. The main issue, though, is that she doesn't have as great of a standard weapon option as Luke. And if Augusta had a better weapon that she worked with off the standard roster that was able to buff her as much as Luke's standard weapon buffs his performance, then she'd probably be in tier 0 as well. And the main reason why she's being knocked down a little bit over here is simply due to the fact that she does feel a bit Sig reliant. You either need her signature or you really want Qiuyuan's signature. And without having one of those, well, her performance doesn't really get up to the level that you want for a more, you know, like a deep TOA floor clearer. But if you do have her Sig, you don't need Yuno at all, and it's kind of just a realization that I feel like pretty much every player that owns her has. And unironically, I feel like if you do own Augusta and Yuno, they're separated more often than not when it comes to actually using them. You usually don't put all of the firepower out there and run a Yuno Augusta team. You typically just run her with Mort and then use Yuno somewhere else where, you know, she has a lot of different use cases. So I think that's a realization a lot of people have had. Now we got Sigrica. And this is the honest take about Sigrica in here. She's one of the strongest DPS units in the game. That's why she's rated so high. She does a fuck ton of damage. Almost a damage amount that doesn't make sense. But she's glued to the hip to Qiuyuan. And if you don't have Qiuyuan and you don't use Qiuyuan with Sigrica, Sigrica's like half a unit. She's not even an actual unit, if we're going to be honest. She's kind of like some straight up dog shit. But on the flip side, Qiuyuan is also a unit that ends up working really, really, really well with other DPSs on the roster. Namely, we talked about them before, the Furlovas as well as the Galbrenas. And so Sigrica having a more tailored unit as her partner like Qiuyuan isn't that big of a deal, specifically due to the fact that, well, pulling Qiuyuan for her means that you now have Qiuyuan for a bunch of other units on the roster. And that's pretty good overall for her value list rankings. Because it's not like a situation where you got like a fucking Cantarella, right? This unit only works with Furlova, and she's dog shit anywhere else. It's fucking terrible. Or Confession Mode Phoebe. Honestly, I don't even know how Cantarella is below Confession Mode Phoebe. Yeah, no, that's definitely something we're gonna have to talk about later. This unit only works with Zani. And if you... That's it. You pull her to work with Zani, and there's no other use case for her. Same with Cantarella. You pull her for Furlova, and there's no other use case for her. It's not like that for the partner tag with Qiuyuan over here, because he goes out, he does his work, he supports other teams, and you don't really get that out of other sub-DPS units. So that's going to be Sigrica over here. I think her placement does make sense because even without her Sig, yeah, she ends up fucking up almost everything in the game. The only thing she's kind of bad at is holograms because, yeah, good luck doing your basic attack chain against some of the bosses. You're fucked. Now, we've got the sub-DPS category, and you're going to notice there's no tier 0.5 supports. That's because Chisa, she's on the watch list. She might go up later. Now we got the sub-DPSs over here. Lupa is in tier 0.5. This is my personal take. I am not entirely sure about Lupa being in tier 0.5 for one specific reason. She requires you to have a fusion healer on your team for you to really access most of your meta strength. That's kind of like the situation over here. You need a Mornier or you need a Brandt for her to have the value that you want her to have on your account. Because otherwise, like what, you're running sustainless teams, which definitely can be done, but they're really suspect. And my personal take is that she could be maybe a little bit closer to tier 1 when these restrictions are in play. She kind of, I know they're not using the partner tag with her, but they might as well at this point, considering Brandt's getting no reruns. Her partner tag is kind of Mornier, at least to function in today's meta. But when Mornier is kind of getting stretched thin, right, being used with, some of the Tomb Break teams with Lene over here, well, sometimes you're just not going to get the full value that you want out of your Lupa unless you also have a Brandt as well. And so the end result for me is that she's a little bit too restricted right now to be in tier 1. Not nearly as close to a plug-and-play unit like Qiuyuan is. I think Qiuyuan definitely belongs in tier 0.5 because you only need a DPS that matches his buffing. With Lupa, you need a fusion DPS that matches her buffing, and you also need a fusion healer as well to match her buffing. So it's like 2 matches. This guy only needs 1. Because, guess what teams you run? You can run Arrow, Rover, Sigrika, Qiuyuan. You can run Qiuyuan, Sigrika. You can run Shorekeeper, Galbrina, Qiuyuan. You can run Frolova, Qiuyuan, Cantarella. Do you kind of see how this guy tends to have a lot more freedom in how he functions compared to her? And I think that additional flexibility and that lack of restriction probably is what keeps him at the top over here, considering his teams are some of the highest performers in the game as well. So yeah, I could see her being bumped down, but I do see why she's at the top over here because her teams are very good. Now, tier 1. This is where stuff starts getting a little bit interesting, ladies and gentlemen. Tier 1 is where we actually have the most DPS characters, in the fucking game. Yeah, literally the most DPS characters in the fucking game. And so essentially, right, you've got Kardathea, Galbrina, Hiyuki, Yuno, Phoebe, and Frolova. This is my personal take. I'll just talk about the people that I think don't belong here. I don't think Phoebe's strong enough to be in tier 1. I'm gonna be real. If we're putting Carlotta in tier 1.5, I think Phoebe's gotta jump down a little bit because I am 100% certain that 99% of people are gonna do better with a Carlotta team than a Phoebe team in most situations. Yes, ladies and gentlemen. When it comes to Yuno, though, Yuno's performance is relatively good as a main DPS, but to use Yuno's best team, you need to use your Lene and your Mornier. It's not like you're using budget options to make your Yuno strong. You're using Giga Premium options to make your Yuno strong. And if you're using your Giga Premium Lene Mornier team, guess who's not getting Lene Mornier? Your Luke or your AeMC, right? And so if a unit kind of requires the very, very, very valuable units to have high performance, and then they're still beat out by other units like AeMC, you can probably see why Yuno, I think, probably belongs in tier 1. Because guess what, guys? You need AeMC's team for Yuno to do good, and when that's the situation, why aren't you using AeMC's team instead? Right? That's probably what most people are thinking. Frolova, on the other hand, Frolova's performance, at least in the TOA, isn't at a high enough level to disregard that her best in slot team features Cantarella. Cantarella is probably one of the most dog shit units in the game outside of a Frolova team. And so Frolova, with her best in slot being Cantarella, that's not really a high value unit. It's awesome that Frolova's second best in slot is Qiuyuan, or really, best in slot in the sub DPS role is Qiuyuan, and that's good value for her, but she gets dragged down by Cantarella at the same time. And when you're not using Cantarella, using a Havoc Rover or a Dan Jin or something like that, well, the end result is that Frolova doesn't really perform, right, at some high tier levels. She gets the job done for sure, but it can be a struggle in a couple of ways. So I think tier 1 is actually a good placement for her, specifically in the TOA, because Cantarella is a bit of a debuff. Now we got Hiyuki in tier 1. And I think that this rating makes sense in the present. Hiyuki's second best team also features Lene and Mornier. That's true. And the same argument that we use for Yuno being in tier 1 is the same for Hiyuki. If you're using Lene Mornier for Hiyuki, it's better in the hands of AeMC. And guess what Hiyuki's best in slot team is? It features Lene and Chisa. So the same argument makes sense over here, right? Lene is better with AeMC and Mornier. And both of Hiyuki's best teams feature you using Lene in either of them. And Lene is technically better elsewhere. So it's kind of like the end result is that if you plan on using the best possible teams your account can actually produce, Hiyuki doesn't actually end up having a team. And that's why they're talking about the rating going up with the Glacio Chafe sub DPS, because it finally lets Hiyuki kind of like detach from her reliance on Lene, because that's really what it is in the present. Or that's really what it is in the present. This is where Lene having such a massive amount of uses, right, in a bunch of different teams is really coming into effect over here. You're seeing just how many DPSs currently right now hinge on her to be at their best. But in a similar vein, right, that's a buff for her, but it's a debuff to those other units, because there's still one unit over here that claims the title as the best Lene user, and that is currently AeMC. Galbraina, on the other hand, kind of like fits with this sort of role over here. Galbraina doesn't do as much damage as a Sigrika, and Galbraina kind of only has two teams that do require good amounts of premium performance. For Mono Fusion, she requires Lupa and Mornier. That's a very expensive team, and it's a kind of like it's a specialized cater team as well. Otherwise, she needs to go with Qiuyuan and like a Shorekeeper. But in that situation, Galbraina Qiuyuan Shorekeeper is a strong team that clears, but it's not like really that crazy of a team overall. So the end result is that Galbraina is mostly just here based off of like some of the specificities she has when it comes to team slots, and the fact that while she does clear with Qiuyuan, it's not as good, right, as Sigrika with Qiuyuan. And that's something that we got to recognize as well. However, she does have the Mono Fusion teams. And now we got Cardathea as the top unit in tier 1 over here. Cardathea's performance is as follows. She needs her signature. And if you don't have Cart's signature, she's not really functioning as a character in the present day. And the reason for that is simple. She's an HP scaler, and there's no other sword in the game that actually gives the stats that she wants. Her signature is also pretty damn good as well, with the amplification and then the defense ignore that it provides too. And so one of the big things over here for why Prydwen doesn't have her rated higher is A, that restriction on her signature, B, the fact that she also really needs Chacona, and C, they've also said that yes, you can quick swap your way out of this mess, and if you do decide to run some crazy Cardathea rotations, ladies and gentlemen, you can go ahead and bump up her performance by a couple of slots. Yes, you will be using some of the more specific teams in the game, but you'll get a much higher level of performance if you do decide to get early onset arthritis. But the reality is very simple. S0R1 Cardathea, right? Even with an S0R1 Chisa and S0R1 Chacona, it does fall behind, at least in performance too, some of the higher level teams that we have in the game, like with AeMC, like with Sigrika, and like, of course, with Hiyuki. And the end result is that, like, hey, unless you do quick swap, the performance doesn't really justify the cost that you're seeing over here. And I think that's fair. But if you do quick swap, don't worry, Zani's got her little bonus here too. Yeah, you can get higher performance at the same cost, but you're also gonna need various hospital appointments in the future to talk about the decaying ligaments in your hands. It is what it is, right? Some people want to have some fun in the present at the sacrifice of their future. Go for it. I'm not your daddy. Now, we got the tier 1 sub DPSs. Let's get this discussion going. Chacona is going to be leading the pack over here. And I think the reason for this is simple. Chacona, in my opinion, is you need her for Cardathea to function. And then outside of that, you're building for fun teams. That's my main takeaway. Chacona is a, like, unit that looks like she's similar to Lupa, but the teams that she ends up leading aren't as strong as Lupa's. From the main perspective of, you kind of just build, like, main DPS, like an alternative, slightly worse Mono Arrow version compared to the Lene and Mornier one. You have Jian Mono Arrow, which is definitely a fun team, but it's not one that's like the best in the game. Or you'd run like Qiuyuan main DPS. Or you go Sustainless Sigrika with like Qiuyuan, her, and but then that doesn't work in the TOA because you die. So it only works in Weewa. The end result is that like Chacona has a lot of like fun teams, but they're not like back-breaking, game-breaking ones. So the end result is that I think tier 1 is a fair placement for her. And for her to have a lot of value in like those mono arrow teams, you also want to have her signature too. So for her to really have like those varied use cases that we're talking about, it does end up being a teeny bit expensive as well. So that's just something to keep in mind. I think tier 1 is a fine placement for her. Now we got Yuno. And it's the same exact argument I'm going to be making for Chacona. Yuno is like a for fun unit. Remember how I talked about Augusta really does well without Yuno? Yeah, that's going to be to Yuno's detriment. Because you never need to pull Yuno if you have Augusta with her signature. You could just decide, hey, I'm going to go skip Yuno and just use more Teffy, and I'll still clear all the content in the game. That's the reality of her. And so when it comes to Yuno, you're mostly playing her for like the fun ability that she has to support a bunch of different teams, the fact that she heals too, or the fact that she can also be a main DPS that's unfortunately just worse than AeMC, right? But still clears very, very, very well. The end result is that Yuno is fun for like a mature account that has a bunch of different characters, but as like a value pull, I can't say she's close to the same level as a lot of other units above her. Because what does Yuno buff? You should know it by now. Yuno buffs heavy attacks. Who deals heavy attack damage in this game? Qiuyuan, Qiuyuan, Augusta, Phoebe, and Zani. But then Phoebe and Zani don't want her because they already have a fuck ton of amp in their teams. So really, it's kind of just 3 units. Qiuyuan, Augusta, and Qiuyuan main DPS. That's like kind of it when it comes to her buffing ability as a sub DPS. Maybe Galbrina. God forbid you're running heavy attack Galbrina with Yuno. That nobody has ever done that ever. However, because she's Arrow and Chacona's there as well, you end up making some very, very strong mono arrow teams, but those require you to use like Qiuyuan and Qiuyuan as the main DPS. And then otherwise, it's kind of like her use cases as a sub DPS kind of like aren't really that there. And hopefully you can kind of see that while it is strong and those teams do clear, it's not like they're giga high performing ones. So her honest judgment as a sub DPS is that she has actually not that many use cases compared to other ones, and I don't think she should be rated that highly. She's still good value, allows a lot of things, definitely at a higher level than other characters, but it's not something that's like a definitive must pull. Then you got more Teffy and Sanhua. I think that this is fine placement for them because they're both free and they both work on like homeless builds. Mortefe probably is a lot better as a DP, like as an actual like DPS in the sub DPS compared to Sanhua, but Sanhua's rotation time is faster. And they both have spots with 2 meta characters and they'll both clear. Sanhua with Luke and then Mortefe with Augusta. Fair enough to me, makes sense to me. And now we got Chisa. Chisa has definitely moved up, right? Because Chisa with Hiyuki, very strong. Chisa should also have a team with AeMC and Denya, but that one doesn't exist yet. And Chisa naturally still works with Cardathea. So I think tier 1 is fair for her because she technically has 2 relatively high-performing teams, and she's on the watch list to move up. But do keep in mind, Chisa has this one weakness specifically for the Cardathea teams. If you do not have her signature, she is worse than Arrow Rover. Please do recognize that. I don't think that's the case in the Hiyuki team, and I don't think that's going to be the case in the Denya AeMC team because there's going to be no real other alternatives, but Cardathea still has Arrow Rover. And so a lot of people kind of feel the necessity to pull that sig because otherwise you just pulled this limited unit and they're worse than the free one, and nobody really wants that, right? That makes you feel like you wasted all your pulls. So a lot of people end up getting Chisa sig anyways. That's also one of the main reasons why she's probably not in tier 0.5 right now, because you kind of do feel like you want her sig. Now, it's time for us to move on and start taking a look at some of the other warriors down here. And this is going to be the tier 1.5 category. We're going to have Carlotta as well as Zoni. This is my personal take. I think that at this current stage in the game, the fact that Carlotta can just use the standard weapon, the new standard weapon, by the way, the very good new standard weapon that just got added to the game, or really not just added, it got added a while ago. This thing is really strong. And the fact that Carlotta can use this, oh, and alongside Galbrina too, I forgot to mention that. And it's super easy to get multiple refinements of these because Kuro Games is just shitting out standard pulls at you every patch. when this is like the reality of the standard weapons nowadays, I feel like it's got to be factored into the rating at least a good bit more, right? Carlotta can get the job done with a standard weapon. That's pretty much just a fact at this point. As well as the fact that, well, her sub DPS doesn't really need their standard weapon, or doesn't really need their signature weapon either. However, this is another fact. Carlotta's best in slot sub DPS that isn't using Lene like every other fucking character on here is Jeja. And Jeja, unfortunately, does not support a lot of units in the game. She kind of just doesn't really support a lot of units. The only other one is honestly Jancy over here, and Jancy's not doing that well either. So I can see her being knocked down on the basis of, well, her best in slot sub DPS that's not Lene just supports Jincy, and that's not very good, is it? That, and you can't even fucking pull Jeja because I don't know when her next banner is going to be coming out. When that's the case, it's this hard to get her best in slot, and like I don't even know when the next Carlotta banner is coming out either. I can see why she's not really that high. Maybe you can't even fucking pull Carlotta either. I don't remember the last time Carlotta even fucking reran too. And so when that's the case, and your only other option other than units that don't run anymore is to do like Lene Mornier, like a bunch of other characters, I can see why she's gotten dropped down. However, if the anniversary banners were here, you could still get Jeja and all of that. Maybe there was an argument for her to be pushed up, but at this point, it's like, yeah, who knows when she's rerunning, and who knows when she's rerunning. It is what it is. So, yeah, even though good standard weapon option, it's still a little bit cooked here. Now we got Zoni. Yeah, this character is fucking dog shit without Phoebe, and this character is also dog shit without Quickswap. So it's kind of like the end result is, do you want to pull a team that needs Quickswap to clear? If so, go for it. Also keep in mind that the unit that you're pulling for Zani, this Phoebe over here, she can't be used anywhere else. Keep that in mind. Yeah, it's a bit rough out here, brother man. Tier 1.5, sub DPS category. We got Brant. Assuming he has his signature, is he truly that bad? I feel like Brant being so good with Lupa has value of its own, because Mornier is only going to have a limited number of uses, and in most situations, Mornier is likely going to be taken up by your Toon teams. And when that's the case, it's like you still need a fusion sustain to work with Lupa. He needs his sig though. Yeah, I get that, but is that restriction so bad that he should go into tier 1.5? I don't know. I don't think so. Does anyone above him need their sig? I feel like Chakota kind of does. Kartithia team without the Chakota sig kind of is... It's a little bit rough, right? Let's be real here. A Kart team without the Chakota sig is... Nowadays can sometimes feel a bit rough. How about this? Bump Phoebe down. That would be better. How about you just bump Confession Mode Phoebe down? He can be the sole tier 1.5 character. I think that would help more. How the fuck is she in tier 1.5? I think that's a better conversation for us to have. The unit that doesn't do anything outside of a Zani team. Nah, I don't believe in that. Bro, I think she's either tier 2 or tier 3. That's my... I think that's way too high. Like this... this to me does not make that much sense, right? I feel like this is worse than Catarella. I feel like this is worse than Jeja. I feel like she could be tier 3. There, that's better. Let's not talk about where Brent is. Let's move Phoebe down to tier 3 and then we're good. I think that's fair. Now we got Arrow Rover and Spectro Rover, tier 1.5. I know they're both free. Does that mean that they're rated too low being in tier 1.5 over here? I feel like Arrow Rover can move at least a little bit up. There are so many Arrow units. Like, Arrow Rover could actually have some solid use cases, like, outside of Kart teams, at the very least. In Spectro Rover, I know they're kind of unplayable without Zani and Phoebe, but like, I think Spectro Rover here is fine. I feel like Arrow Rover can move up. Yeah, I feel like Arrow Rover can move up to tier 1, just because there's so many Arrow units for them to use. Arrow Rover can also be the 3rd slot. Yeah, you can run Arrow Rover, Qiuyuan, Sigrika, and that team like fucks everything in the game. It's actually good. I've used it before, and I was like surprised at how good it is. So, yeah, it's just, they got a lot more teams than just Kartithia and Chakota. But just use Verina instead, though. Verina and Qiuyuan are not made to work with each other. Brother, your intro skill, like, Qiuyuan takes the intro skill all the time, right? And then bro's just out here running with a full forte around the battlefield. It's not good. Qiuyuan is not a character that you want multiple intro skills on, surprisingly enough. He kind of gets his shit fucked up. Yeah, I don't like running Verina and Qiuyuan and then a third DPS. It ends up feeling fucking weird. I do not understand. All right, looks like we got to do some gameplay demonstrations. Just take a look at the second rotation in this team. The first one's not really going to do anything. Just take a look at the second one.
Life is in everything.
What sleeps within bamboo? Your life is mine to take.
You're going to be like, oh, Saint, I see what you're talking about. You're a genius, bro.
Let me
My move
greet
is
my
the blade.
friend. This is it. Straight to the stars.
Oh, damn, my Sagrika's kind of popping off, though. Holy shit, she kind of doing some damage over here, brother. Oh, amigo. Holy moly. Right? You do a little bit of this, right?
Bask in the sunlight.
And then, well, whoopsies.
Bird of evergreen.
You're over here,
Mandate
right?
calls. Judgment falls.
And, like, I don't like Qiuyuan getting all of those intro skills because I feel like some of his timers can get, like, fucked up. Oh, shit, did I fuck up here? Oh, I might have extended her rotation. Oh, dearie me. I mean, like, this is the thing. It's obviously, like, still strong and stuff, and I fucked up with the timing there. But I don't like how much he's, like, running around and shit. And, like, sometimes I feel like I accidentally build up, like, 2 points of forte doing his heavy attacks and stuff just to, like, reposition. And I end up, like, running out of, like, his Quietude Within buff. I've had that happen before when he takes multiple intros. Oh, I can just show you guys a situation where he gets fucked up. So just imagine for a second, right? You're, like, doing stuff like this on your Qiuyuan.
What sleeps within bamboo? One strike.
He can come in sometimes with his entire forte bar ready to go. And in most situations, that, like, won't be bad. But, like, let's just say that you, like, miss an attack or something, right?
My move is the blade.
And then watch this.
Know what explosion means? Cool your head.
So now my Qiuyuan comes in like this
Life is in
with a full
everything.
forte.
Bird of evergreen.
And then I lost the Quietude Within buff. So I'm saying that is something that can come up, especially as you do more and more rotations with the team, because you might accidentally, right, do an extra heavy attack or two on Qiuyuan just to, like, fill in, like, some of, like, the windows, right? And then that can just occur when you go in and then your first intro toss him off completely. So I've just had that happen before, and I'm just kind of like, it's kind of like a pain in the fucking ass, especially when this team rotates fast, and in a single run, right, you can guarantee, like, 5 or 6 rotations. Sometimes you, like, mess up on, like, your 4th rotation, and then your 5th one gets bungled. You can also just intro skill it on Verina as well, and that's likely, if you have an S2 one, no real issue doing that either. But this shit? Okay, hopefully these guys don't end up running too far.
Hopefully this helps. What sleeps within bamboo? One strike.
I like running this team too.
Break like bamboo. Winds. Hell, my move is the blade.
Oh wow, that's actually incredible grouping.
Straight to the stars.
Yeah, it seems like it's doing a lot more damage than the Verina one as well. Holy moly.
Cool your head.
Wind calls, waves follow.
Bro, is the tracking on this guy stupid?
Waves rise. Judgment strikes.
Hopefully this helps.
How was that deemed like an acceptable fucking... What was that?
Is mine to take.
Oh my, you piece of fucking shit character, bro. Because guess what, guys? Sometimes you gotta do this shit as well on Qiuyuan. You gotta charge up an entire fucking new Forte bar. Because bro gets interrupted, and you gotta get that third cast.
Know what explosion means? True name? Illuminate!
So that happens too, right? I'm just saying that this team has a lot of opportunities for the rotation to get a little bit fucked up. And this one over here. What am I missing?
I am the Tempest.
Bro, is my game like bugged beyond relief at the moment?
Calls.
Why did I like get the oddest camera angle in gacha history over there?
My move is the blade.
What the fuck was that? Basically, all I'm saying is, yo, Arrow Rover. Dude, did my Decipher actually just miss? Anyways, Arrow Rover should be bumped up. That's the main thing that we're saying over here, ladies and gentlemen. I feel like I've convinced you of that. Tier 2. Jinxie and Qiuyuan. I don't think I can overstate this enough. Qiuyuan is currently still the best 1.x character in terms of like his overall team's performance. And so at a baseline, I don't think him and Jinxie can even be in the same category. I don't think that's possible because when you go Chakota, Qiuyuan, that's like the strongest 1.x team. And like, this is the thing. I'm pretty sure that team is stronger than Zani without Quick Swap, and it's also stronger than Carlotta with Jeja. So like, if you compare his 6-cost team to other 6-cost teams, it's like, yeah, he's kind of like here, isn't he? And I could see the value argument, but this is the thing. All the members of Qiuyuan's 6-cost team, and this is Qiuyuan's 6-cost team, by the way, he has flexible units that he works with. Bro, it's not like these units are trash. It's not like these units are like Phoebe or Cantarella. These units have other use cases where they're very good. Chakona, for example, very good with Cart. Also works with Sagrika in some teams. Can work with Sagrika. Works with Augusta. Works with all these different characters. And so Qiuyuan's teammates, right, for his Giga Premium team, they're all usable elsewhere. You can't say the same thing about Jancy, though. Yeah, what are her teammates doing? Some dog shit. Yeah, there's some trash. Like, what? You got Jeja? That ain't very good. Bro, remove Qiuyuan and put Arrow, Rover, or Lene. Yeah, you want to know what would happen if you did that? You're not clearing any AoE content, brother. Yeah, you're doing less damage and you're not clearing AoE content. This is a TOA tier list. Hey, the TOA got some AoE in it, brother. I'm not gonna lie, though. I'm not gonna lie. The TOA has been introducing more AoE. Anyways, from like just a damage perspective, yeah, I mean, his best in slot team is better than all of these. What do you want me to say? What do you want me to say performance-wise? His best in slot team is better than Jinxie's. His best in slot team is better than Zani's. His best in slot team is better than Carlotta's. Proof? They get better clear times. His best in slot team gets better clear times than all three of these characters. This ain't the performance tier list, is the value one. Bro, you got Zani above him. Bro, she is the craziest dead end investment-wise in this game. Yeah, I know it's a value tier list, but you got Zani up here. So that's why I'm saying it. And I know you got the expert tag too, right? So this is Zani without Quick Swap that we're rating over here as better than Qiuyuan on the value tier list. I'm just saying, it's a little bit questionable to me. Qiuyuan, Chakota is one more character than Zani, Phoebe, Spectro, Rover. And Zani, Phoebe, Spectro, Rover is unplayable without Quick Swap. So really, you're rating it based off of Zani, Phoebe, Shorekeeper. Brother, if you were rating this off Zani, Phoebe, Spectro, Rover with no Quick Swap, bro, that shit is like tier 4. We know that team, you can't play 1, 2, 3, Zani, Spectro, Rover, Phoebe. Nah, that shit is like tier 5. That shit is dog ass without Quick Swap. So like, if we're gonna say no Quick Swap Zani, that's gotta feature Shorekeeper in it. Anyways, all I'm saying is that I think he can move up one tier. That's the gist of that discussion over there. We got tier 2. I think Cantarella needs to go down. Yeah, I don't think Cantarella even belongs here. I think Cantarella and Phoebe can both pack their bags and go to tier 3. Basically, I want it to be really stated that these two units, Phoebe and Cantarella, they only work with one other character on the roster, and the only other one character that they work with isn't, like, changing everything. Zani, for example, is changing nothing, and TOA for Lova is also changing nothing as well. This ain't like you unlocking, right? Like AeMC's hidden partner that gives her tier 0 level performance. No, that's Lene. You're just unlocking slightly better performance for characters that aren't even at the top of the meta with Cantarella and Phoebe. I think they can both go into the bargain bin, bro. Yeah, no, they aren't real units. Changli, expert tag +1. So incorporating some quick swap into her rotations. Tier 2. I feel like Changli with Brant is still like incredibly strong in the game. To like a level that's like still like impressive, but maybe if you had like a partner tag or something for Changli, and then you could bump her up a little bit. I think if you put partner with Brant, you can actually bump her up to tier 1.5. But yeah, you give her the partner Brant tag. And I think that's the one situation where it can work. Because these two together is still like incredibly strong with a Lupa. I feel like it's more partner Lupa low-key. It's like partner Lupa and Brant, to be honest. Yeah, it's kind of like a love triangle going on. But this is the thing. Basically, what I'm saying is that the mono fusion Changli team is still very strong. It's still like incredibly strong, incredibly good, and clears pretty much everything in the game that's not going to dodge Brant anchors. But if the enemy dodges Brant anchors, yeah, your shit is kind of cooked. It's still like a very, very, very strong performer. And I feel like having units that get better, and then as you assemble their pieces, right, to make them better, you end up helping out a lot of other teams as well. It costs a ton and still doesn't get you a ton of performance. With Brant Lupa, you can just pull Imeth or Galbraina, if you know what I mean. I think this is kind of like the weird part of the value tier list is when it comes to the older characters that haven't rerun in more than a year. Because, like, it's not like anyone's had the chance to pull them. And I feel like part of the ranking right now is for people that have them, whether or not it's even worth investing more into them. Because there's probably some people that have, like, a Jian or a Changli on their account, right? And if you were to judge all the units that they have, like a returning player, they have, like, a Zhang Li, a Jin Si, a Yin Lin, right? It's best for them to invest into their Jian or their Changli compared to everybody else. Like that is the best decision that they could make to get more value out of who they already have. Yeah, I guess that's part of the criteria that I'm looking at is that, like, what does their best in slot teams involve? And I assume for the 1.x units, it's sort of like a fair determination to make because you haven't been able to pull them in over a year. So it's kind of just like, yeah, for whoever still has them and, like, wants to try to make the teams better, who's the best overall ones to pick? I mean, like, let's be entirely honest. Out of all the 1.x units, these are the highest rated ones, which I think is fair, except Jinxie should probably be bumped down a little bit. But yeah, I mean, there's not really any real disagreements here. It's kind of just like, you know what? They are the highest rated 1.x units, Jian and Changli. I just think Jinxie should probably be bumped down a bit just to fully recognize she is some doo-doo water. Jeju being over here, I guess, makes sense because she's still good with Carlotta and still, you know, Jinxie's best in slot, but it's not like, yeah, it's not like the Jinxie team is really that good, so maybe she could be bumped down. And then Booling is over here. Free, Electro Flare, all of that. Yeah, Booling's teams are a little bit limited, but I mean, assuming you do have her S6, I think she could belong in tier 1.5. I haven't used her enough to comment on it, though. So, yeah, do take that with a grain of salt. And now we kind of just have the speed category over here, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just be entirely real. Brant, main DPS in tier 3. Is it that bad? Is it truly at the point where it's tier 3 levels of bad? Can we talk about the fact that, like, if you pull his signature, then, like, you also have him as a healer too? Or is this counting in how hard his echoes are to work? Is this also counting in how hard he is to build? I suppose. Yeah, he has one of the most expensive echo builds in the game. Just go pull Imeth instead of Brant for Lupa Mornier. Yeah, but think about it this way. Now I can run Lupa Brant. And then any other fusion DP. I could run that team too, though. Because what if my Mornier is busy with a Lene or my Mornier is busy with, like, I don't know, the next Tomb Break sub DPS that comes out. You can also run Lupa AeMC. True, I could do that. That's something that's very, very, very possible. But then who's my Lene running with? Brett as a hybrid is higher for that reason. I mean, there's not a lot of hybrid characters that can main DPS, though. And Brandt's main DPS team is kind of, you know, it does end up, I think, feeling like a team whole that I guess only like Galbreda works with and Galbreda can't sustain. Because let's be honest here, right? You could run Lupa AeMC, but it's just always worse than Lene. Lene Hiyuki then. Sure, I suppose, but like it's also a matter of like, well then why aren't you running Chisa Denya AeMC? Do you see what I mean? There's a lot of different discussions to have over here. Maybe tier 3. I feel like maybe he could be tier 2. Just to kind of showcase that it's, I feel like tier 3 is just crazy though. Next you got Encore and then Rover. I guess that's fair. Yeah, I mean, they're free. That's part of the... I'm pretty sure these units being free is the only thing keeping them up here. Otherwise, they would be in tier 4. Then you got Dan Jin because of her Frolova supporting ability. Sure. And then Baija because she's not Yohu or Yanwu. I think that's fair. Now we got tier 4. And now we got Zhang Liao and Camellia down here. Jesus Christ. We really don't like Camellia anymore, do we? We really don't like her anymore, do we? Yeah, I mean, I guess that's fair enough because, well... Think about it this way. Their best in slot sub DPSs are Rosia and Yinlin, respectively. And these two are so fucking bad that I think they just drag these down into hell for infinity. And I think the worst thing that ever happened to Camellia was having her best in slot sub DPS be Rosia, who is like so undertuned, it's fucking crazy. Yeah, no, this unit is so dog shit, it's unbelievable. Sanhua is better. Like, imagine that actually occurring. Imagine that actually being the case. Why is Camellia worse? Because Camellia has literally hit her ceiling investment-wise. Literally hit her ceiling investment-wise. And, like, if you're going for a basic attack DPS, Luke is just better than Camellia at this point. So that's kind of like it. Everyone else that we're seeing here, I think we all kind of just know that they're not strong meta-wise, and they're just not, even though they're free, they're just not strong meta-wise at all, so they're not really worth investing in. And I think that's fair enough. That's going to be the TOA tier list. I would say overall, aside from like the placement of a couple of characters, I'm pretty on board with this one. Main ones being, I feel like Phoebe is way too high in confession mode. Chang Li could maybe be bumped up, and so could Jian. But yeah, everything else I would suppose looks pretty solid to me. Oh yeah, Arrow Rover too, potentially. Yeah, just because there are more Arrow teams that are in the game. But other than that, tier 1 is definitely going to be the category that I feel like... Oh, and I think Absolution Phoebe needs to be dropped down as well. I'm going to be so for real with you. Bro, I feel like she does not perform. Maybe you're doing like some unethical, illegal dodge cancels or some shit like that. But yeah, she just does not perform as far as I'm concerned. I've never gotten her to perform under any context. Now, we got the next side of the value tier list, ladies and gentlemen. Are you ready? Whimpering Wastes. And, oh, this is the one that's going to get crazy, isn't it? The Wee-Wah tier list. This one should be fast. You're not seeing a lot of characters up here. Tier 0, Frolova. Not too surprising, Frolova fucks every single Wee-Wah reset with her eyes closed, assuming you have some good teams with her. And then Qiuyuan, tier 0 as well. Well, that's because Qiuyuan supports the two best Wee-Wah units. One with Sigrika, and then, of course, the other with Frolova. They both want him, which is kind of like the odd part. However, it's probably better to pair up Qiuyuan with Sigrika under these circumstances, because Frolova has other teammates that she can use as well. In tier 0.5 supports, you're going to have Shorekeeper and Verina. I think that's fair, especially when you consider the fact that Frolova's best team doesn't feature these two. And Sigrika's best Wee-Wah team also doesn't feature either of these two characters. But they're still going to be tier 0.5, even though both these DPSs actually don't use these guys. That's just because of their general use cases. Next up in tier 1, Augusta. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Augusta is going to be the only tier 1 DPS unit. I'm personally a little bit interested to see where some of the other characters have landed over here, because as far as I'm concerned, it feels like there could be some higher units, but maybe we'll see as it goes on. But I don't think most people can disagree with Augusta, because remember, the whole situation I talked about with Mortefi being able to clear very affordably, that applies in Whimpering Wastes as well. So, yeah, nothing too crazy over here. Strong value, tier 1 sub DPSs. You got Cantarella, simply because she's Furlova's best in slot. Then you have Chakota, simply because Chakota works really well with Segrika and Qiuyuan. Then you got Lupa over here. I don't know if the fusion DPSs are good enough for Lupa to be up here. That's my personal take. I don't know if they are good enough for her to be up here. Same, at the very least, with Lene at this point. When you're kind of like at the point where, again, the two best sort of like performers don't utilize any of these two. Maybe it's similar to like the Shorekeeper and the Verina situation being placed highly despite their best DPSs not really being there. Maybe. We'll see. I also find that Lupa's kit can have counterproductive value in Weewa, where if you use her in the middle of a 1-cost wave, bro, she sends all the enemies flying to hell. It's terrible. She sends the enemies fucking flying, bro. It's kind of cancerous. And then her dodge can sometimes make it so that you dodge an attack in the middle of one of your big animations. So like she almost has like anti-quality of life for Weewa sometimes. And then Mornier, from what I've seen, Toon teams are kind of really fucking bad in Whimpering Wastes. Mornier is not really a like highly sought after unit outside of Mono Fusion actually in Whimpering Wastes. I feel like Mornier's best team in Weewa right now literally is Mornier, Lupa, and then Galbrena. I'm not even joking. I feel like that's the best Mornier team because you don't really want to use Tomb Break teams in there. They kind of don't feel that great in the game mode. Maybe if I saw Galbrena a bit higher up here, it would make sense to me. And maybe Galbrena does deserve a tier 1. Based on the fact that Galbrena really is very strong in Mono Fusion, as well as the fact that Galbrena Qiuyuan also kind of gets the job done. You know what I mean? Galbrena Qiuyuan also clears Weewa. So maybe it does make sense for her to be up here because her second best in slot fits over here too. And she's kind of like with Lupa and Mornier. Like Lupa and Mornier are only up here because of Galbrena. Because like who the fuck else are you using? Are you running like a, I guess an AeMC? Does an AeMC Lupa and Mornier team feel good? Or does Galbrena just feel better than AeMC? I guess that's the main competition. In Mono Fusion for Weewa, does Galbrena or AeMC feel better? And whoever does, maybe they're the ones that get bumped up, but you can kind of see that they're both like up here. Now we got tier 1.5, and this is where AeMC is going to be alongside Galbrena and Hiyuki. I don't feel like the Toon Rupture team is like that amazing in Whimpering Wastes, especially for like the budget that you're putting on into it. And I'm personally of the take that Lene, based off of how not that good some of like the Rupture teams and stuff feel, she could have been bumped down. But I think it's also fair to keep Lene up here, considering that Hiyuki works very well with Lene in this game mode. I think that Galbrena definitely is, as somebody that can use both Qiuyuan and Lupa over here, pretty consistent. And so maybe that's why Lupa's up here, because she can support both AeMC and Galbrena to this degree. And then Lene's up here, I guess, because she can support AeMC and Hiyuki to this degree. I guess it's fair for sure. Hiyuki definitely on the watch list, though, especially as like the Glacial Chafe character ends up coming out. But I do think Hiyuki's overall performance in Weewa is just at a baseline, like, good. Hiyuki has one of these very, very, very good mechanics where she has multi-hits on some of her hardest hitting abilities. The first hit will, like, clear a wave, and then she'll nuke the second one and, like, blow it up instantly. So I feel like as people get more time to, like, get a feel for her rotations and kind of, like, her kill thresholds for certain abilities, she'll get better with time. That's my personal thought. Yeah, she has, like, some lingering hitboxes and stuff. So, I think even without the Glacial Chafe support, she should be bumped up anyways. And that would further justify the Lene rankings and maybe Chisa even moving up as well. Sub DPSs. Mortife's here naturally because of his ability to support Augusta. And then we'll have Yuno over here as kind of like another unit in tier 1.5. I think this makes sense because Yuno ends up supporting some of the best heavy attackers, but Augusta doesn't necessarily need her. She could still function with more Teffy, but the link over here is still being drawn. But another thing that Yuno is really good at is, of course, supporting Gion too. However, does he deserve to be higher at a baseline? maybe if we're gonna have Chakota and Yuno up here, because I don't know. I feel like his Weewa team, it's definitely a bit better than the Cart and the Zani ones for sure. Anyways, we're gonna have tier 1.5 Chisa over here. I think it makes sense with her on the watch list to move up, especially considering that, well, the Denya team is coming out soon, which should be really good in Weewa, and Hiyuki feels really good with Chisa and Weewa. So it is what it is. Now, we got the tier 2 DPSs. Camellia. I think that this is fair because Camellia does actually still clear with like a Shorekeeper Sanhua. I don't think anyone can misrecognize that. She also clears with like a Rosia as well. So that's not anything too crazy. I would say the main thing that really confuses me though is like, dude, I feel like Zodi and Phoebe actually are like, they don't feel very good in the game mode at all. I think they could probably use like an expert tag +2 or something like that and then be like bumped down. I don't know what it is, but like these two in Whimpering Wastes, I don't know how people are getting good results out of them without doing some demonic shit on the battlefield. Like straight up. Like if you're not like extending Zani's rotation time like crazy with additional blazes and stuff, I don't really know what's even happening. Yeah, I feel like at her baseline, her rotations, like if you're not quick swapping, I feel like she doesn't even get close to decent results. That's my personal take. I just have not seen Zani clears in a long time. Cardathea, she really doesn't feel that good without quick swap either. Let's be real here. Cardathea ends up like overkilling, not really having erosion stacks on enemies and stuff like that, so on and so forth. Yeah, I'm glad that the expert tag is on her. And remember, with this being like the value tier list and stuff like that, we're talking about like her general ability. I think tier 2 is actually a fine spot for her because it is an expensive fucking team that you're building. It is an expensive team that you're building with some specialized teammates, and you're also factoring in Chisa too. It just doesn't really perform at the levels that you would be expecting. Probably because it is a bit more of a TOA focused team. And then Gian over here, his team is really good for certain. Yeah, his team is really good for certain. But the teammates that you're pairing it up with, I think the main thing is that, Yuno's good with Augusta, Chakota's good with Sigrika, and those are the teammates he ends up using. I mean, it's not like he has any big detractors over here. It's not like you can pull him anymore. And if you end up building these other teams for Weewa, you end up like building his at the same time. And so it's just, yeah, it's like a nice to have. It's like a nice little bonus for people here. So, yeah, Chakota and Yuno are strong units that have some good teams, and then Gian ends up benefiting from it in a good way. Now, tier 2 sub DPSs bump Phoebe down. What the fuck are we doing here? Now, the Zani team without any baseline quick swap is not good enough for Phoebe. Nah, she needs to be like fucking tier 3, bro. Nah, she needs to be tier 3 at a baseline. Brant, his anchor doesn't do enough nowadays to like one-shot waves, and the end result is that, yeah, he's gotten really bad to play. But when he's in a state where his anchor clears like 3 waves by itself, he feels really good. It's just, it hasn't been like that for a while. Yeah, I think Zani just needs to be lowered at a baseline for sure. Because, like, bro, if you're not quick swapping with her in Weewa, it's just like, what are we even doing here? And then, Rosia. I think Rosia, Camellia, while being dog shit in the TOA, does end up actually doing stuff in Whimpering Wastes. So I suppose it works out. Rovers being here, fair, because they feel really shit in Weewa. And now we got the hobo DPS category. Yeah, these guys are just not good. I'm sorry. Luke Herson is like, unless he gets like a really good grouper, which I think Denya does. I think Denya actually has grouping. When Denya comes into the game, I feel like Luke is probably going to get like a buff up, assuming that she is like his tune break support and that she has more grouping. Because this guy's biggest issue is that he doesn't have a grouper. But if he did have one, I feel like he would fuck up a good amount of what's in the game. We got the black hole suction character coming out. Maybe she's going to fix up his shit real good. However, on the other hand, Carlotta, nah, that ain't happening. Nah, that ain't happening. This unit is dead. Better in use cases than other DPSs, but she's dead, bro. Let's be real here. She's too single target for her own good. Has a good nuke and stuff like that, but she kind of needs to be played in dual DPS, but dual DPS is not in Weewa nowadays. And Phoebe, what the fuck is she even doing here? Wait, you need Chakona or she can't do anything. What? No, she's in tier 4. What the fuck is she doing? Why? Where's her partner tag too? What the fuck? Just put her in the bin, bro. And then Chang Li, same argument with Brant. She kind of like just doesn't do it anymore. Danjin and Sanhua. Sanhua not dealing any meaningful damage at all in her rotation is not that bad in TOA, but it's really bad in Wiwa, where you want a sub DPS that can still deal a good amount of AoE damage and still deal a decent amount of chip damage too. And Sanhua doesn't do any of those because the character does no fucking damage. So yeah, it's rough. And then Baizha and then Yohu. I haven't used these two characters enough to really make a judgment here, and I don't think anyone else has either, so we'll just trust Prydwen with this one. And now we got the tier 4 main DPSs. Brant, remember what I said about his anchor not being able to clear multiple waves? Yeah, it's kind of like amplified over here. His anchor used to be able to delete multiple waves, and he was strong as a main DPS, but if he can't do that, your shit is kind of cooked. Calcharo, he's dog shit. Chisa, she's not good. Encore is fucking nightmare trying to use this single target demon in anything multi-wave, so that's not good. Yuno is, oddly enough, good in single target with TOA. Her attacks can't hit more than one target, I'm pretty sure. It's coded in, she can only hit one target at a time. So that's not good. Jinxie, it's not even worth trying to play Jinxie in this game mode anymore. Ling Yang, yeah. Havoc Rover, Zhang Liao. I think Zhang Liao is, oddly enough, he could belong in tier 3 if we're frankly being. I don't think Zhang Liao is that bad in Whimpering Wastes. I think he's actually probably like, out of all these characters, he's probably the best one. Yeah, I don't think he's that terrible. I think he could be in tier 3. I think we're actually underrating him a little bit. Yeah, I think we're underrating him a little bit because, oddly enough, you might get better results with Zhang Liao, Mornier, and Lene than an AeMC would. I'm not even... You might get better results with Zhang Liao in, like, the Mornier AeMC team or, like, in the Mornier Lene team than AeMC because he wouldn't overkill as much. Potentially. Potentially. Who knows? Who knows? I'm merely throwing that out there. Now for the sub DPSs. Oh, yeah. No, these guys are just... Put them in the fucking bin. Jeja is just going to trade spots with Rosia. Rosia used to be the most dog shit one in TOA. Jeja is also so bad in Wiwa, it's insane. I've never seen a more single target character in the game. I've never seen a more single target oriented sub DPS in the game. Bro, she summons 21 Inklet spirits. They can only hit one thing at a time. It's like not even having a sub DPS when you put Jeja in this game mode. And then Yohu and Yanwu, don't even talk about them. Yeah, I would dare say the Wiwa tier list is probably a lot simpler to follow compared to the TOA one for most people. And I think that's simply due to the fact that it's very obvious who's good and who's not good in this game mode. Because most people kind of just recognize who they're struggling a lot with just to get regular clears. And, well, guess what? It's basically everybody that's, like, below this line over here. You're having kind of a rough fucking time. And there's a lot of characters in the game that have a rough fucking time in this game mode. If I were to give you the best overall judgment of who you should be really going for in this game, it should be units that rate highly on both of these levels of the tier list. And so, naturally, you're probably going to be thinking of characters like, ooh, Augusta, ooh, Sigrica, maybe a little bit of Frolova in there as well, and then, naturally, a bit of Hiyuki too. What I do like, though, is that a lot of these units that we're seeing rated super highly over here usually do have some drawbacks that you see on the other tier list. And so it does feel relatively balanced just from like a performance in various game modes perspective, while there are some standouts like Augusta and Sigrica that end up doing well in both, but they have their own weaknesses, right? And so naturally, what I think a player should always end up doing is like weigh all the various options that they have. And this definitely would have been an insane tier list to have with anniversary reruns. But the reality is very simple, ladies and gentlemen. It's not like we have that much stuff to even pull on in the fucking game anyway. So, yeah, you can take that value tier list, keep it in, like, the back of your mind. Always, you know, like, make sure you pull it back up whenever it's time to pull. But, yeah, that's kind of just, like, the situation over here. So maybe there will be more people during the Sigrica rerun. Maybe there'll be more people during the Hiyuki rerun. Maybe there'll be more people during a Augusta rerun and stuff like that. Now that you kind of know at a baseline who's a lot more valuable. But I would just say Prydwen did a pretty good stab over here. It's simply just the placement of maybe some of the more older or outdated units that I feel like could use some refining. But does it really matter that much where units like Carlotta, Zani, Jian, Jinxie, Phoebe are when we may never see a rerun for them ever again, right? It kind of doesn't really fucking matter at this point. We'll just have to see what Kuro Games decides to do, but for, I guess, the stuff that's actually in the game that you're going to be able to pull, I think Prydwen did a good job with this one. Let me know what you all thought. Peace out.